Okay, well, welcome to tonight's Geelong Lord Mayoral Forum. This is a historic forum, obviously in many aspects, this being the first direct election of the Lord Mayor's position in Geelong. And it's also historic in the sense it's also been facilitated by the organisation OurSay, which is a social enterprise which was established by a group of young people in August 2010, very much committed towards this idea of employing new technologies such as social media, internet and so on, to try to facilitate a broader basis of public participation. So my name's Jeff Robinson. I'm a lecturer in Australian Studies and Politics at Deakin University, and I've been invited to facilitate this forum, and certainly grateful for the opportunity here. And certainly Deakin University is very committed towards encouraging engagement with the local community. Obviously a university that originally began in Geelong and that I still hope very much has its heart in Geelong, perhaps is shown for this beautiful building here. And obviously it's not only OurSay which has been involved in supporting this, but also I think Deakin University as well substantially, also I think the Victorian Local Governance Association and Municipal Association of Victoria. Now, in terms of the forum for how this is going to operate, obviously this is going to be a fairly compressed process, operating for 1 hour. We're going to have a great deal to fit in here. So what we're going to have is we're going to have a brief introduction of the candidates. We're then going to have an opportunity for the first question which has come up. And these questions have come up through a democratic online process. I think 33 questions were originally submitted to potentially be asked at this forum. People were then given the opportunity to vote on which candidates to select. And the total votes actually was an impressive 945. So the questions that you're going to hear today, obviously they're only a small selection of so many questions that could be asked about Geelong and the future of local governance and community affairs in this city here, but they were selected by a democratic process here, and it does provide that opportunity for people to have their voice being heard there. The first question was actually submitted on behalf of the Australian Youth Climate Coalition, who I see are well represented here in their highly stylish t-shirts. So, mayoral candidates. The science tells us that in order to avoid the worst impacts of climate change, it is urgent we rapidly reduce our emissions by the end of the decade. Now is the crucial time to kickstart our transition to a low pollution economy. Obviously, there's been a lot of state and federal government concern given towards this issue, but local government can also play a role. And we'd like the candidates to state, if elected, what action they would take to assist the process of the transition towards a low carbon economy. So, starting with you, Stephanie.
Thanks for your question. Great question. We cannot manage what we don't measure. That's basically Sustainability 101. I'm passionate about sustainability. I've got more than 10 years experience reporting, sustainability reporting with government organisations and some of the world's biggest companies. We need to understand where we are now, which means doing baseline research across a load of different sustainability indicators, including our emissions. I'd first look at future-proofing Geelong, celebrate what's been done well. I gather the low carbon growth plan is a roadmap for action, which is great. We don't seem to have implemented many of the actions yet, so I suspect we've experienced a little bit of the curse of the committee, death by meeting. So I'd review what hasn't been implemented and breathe some life into the project, really get it going. According to the plan, there's potential for 1.3 million tonnes of emissions abatement. The big opportunities are in cogen, solar, waste to energy, retrofitting existing buildings, which is very popular with the community. They don't want new buildings, they want retrofitting and refits of old buildings, and helping small businesses with energy efficiency. So it's doing a lot of really interesting projects with small business. Reducing emissions would be part of a sustainability audit of the region. I think we've clearly done the plan for carbon neutrality, which is great, but we need to get on with it, expand it and measure our progress. Thank you.
Thank you. And now moving across, and I will follow a rigid order which has been given to me by OurSay. We're now going to move across to Keith Fagg.
Yeah. I thought we were in the order. That's fine, thank you. Thanks for the question. I think the council needs to plan for climate change, and I think the current council has actually taken a great lead on this and is to be commended on what they've done so far. If you look at the CEOGG annual report, the concept of future-proofing Geelong has been adopted fully, and I think the associated programs which are outlined in that report are very supportable. To me, most of them simply make sense and they should be continued. Certainly greening in Geelong, stormwater harvesting, certainly the cycle programs just to encourage cycling, for instance, as a regular daytime activities is fantastic. So I certainly support the continued trust in this. Some of them obviously will have budget implications and that will need to be looked at, but the principle is there. I support that. I've also got some other ideas in terms of practical things like community gardens and also allowing nature strip gardens as part of that greening process.
Excellent. Thank you, Keith. Everybody's keeping to time so far, and now on to John Mitchell.
Thanks, Keith. Thank you very much for that. First of all, I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land, the Wathaurong people, and pay my respects to their elders, both past and present. I'd also like to say that the Future-Proofing Geelong, the Low Carbon Growth Plan, the city was the first regional city in Australia to have such a plan. The Future-Proofing Sustainability Covenant is a partnership program between the City, the EPA Victoria, Barwon Water, Deakin University, the Committee for Geelong, Geelong Manufacturing Council, the Geelong Chamber of Commerce. The first Future-Proofing Geelong action was to develop a low-carbon growth plan. We've done that. The plan identifies opportunities for Geelong to reduce emissions to continue to develop economically. The city has established a three-pronged approach to achieve objectives of the plan: assisting commercial building owners and tenants, facilitating community reference group for small to medium reference group to identify sustainability projects important to the community, a city officer to assist companies to prepare bids, grants and environmental improvements. The federal government Community Energy Efficiency Program has provided $550,000 to the city in matching funds, which will be used to reduce the city's carbon footprint. We do already have programs where we co-generate, stormwater harvest, build community gardens, re-green Geelong. All of those things are in place as we speak, but we are leading Australia in this field.
Excellent. Everyone's keeping to time. I'm very impressed so far. Okay, and now moving across to Bernadette for her response to that question.
Thank you, Jeff. Geelong is the first regional city to have a low carbon growth plan. This plan maps the strategy to transition Geelong in reducing its greenhouse gas emissions by more than 1 million tonnes by 2020. I'm a signatory to the Future-Proofing Geelong Sustainability Covenant and am a member of the Advisory Board for Future-Proofing Geelong, so I understand the importance of this work and the significance of ensuring that the key strategies contained in the 2011 Climate Works report are implemented. I was also the initial chair of the Future-Proofing Geelong SME reference group and sat on the working group, so I have a very clear understanding of this initiative. I actively participated in the consultation process for Low Carbon Growth Plan and have taken an active role in promoting the plan's three key strategies, moving the region to localised power generation with clean tech through cogen and renewables, retrofitting commercial and residential buildings to improve energy efficiency, and supporting small to medium businesses with energy efficiency initiatives. Commercial building retrofits is one of the easiest and cheapest ways of generating energy efficiencies, and grants are available to support such initiatives. As Mayor, I will continue to push this important initiative and support eligible organisations to apply for the energy efficiency information grants, which Geelong missed out on with round one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bernadette. Everybody continues to keep to time. It's very impressive. And now moving across to Graham Robin, who had the opportunity to respond to this question. Go, Graham.
You know, it's a problem, isn't it? Climate change and global warming. I would like the debate to be more focused on the basis for it. And that's who is the creator of the emissions. And you have to come back and say it's people, the population, the world population. I was born in 1937, and the population, that was 75 years ago. And the population of the world then was 2.25 billion people. It's now 7. Put that in my lifetime, the world's population has trebled. It doesn't make much sense to look another 75 years out and say that it's going to be 21 billion people. We can't, our world is only a certain size, we can't hold more. So the debate should be more, I think, should be more about creating an environment of zero population growth rather than focusing on car emissions. I think that's about all I need to say.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Robin. And now moving across to Sue Bull, who has the opportunity.
Thank you. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Wathaurong. I'd like to begin by saying that I do think that future-proofing Geelong was a really great place to start, and it was a wonderful initiative. So I think Geelong's actually got off to a really good start. But I think we now need to capitalise upon some of the ideas that are there in future-proofing Geelong and recognise that indeed we do face a pretty grim future at the moment. Those issues of energy use, climate change and rising sea levels are very real, and frankly we need to get cracking. So some of the things that I think we need to start by doing is to actually win the confidence of people about the issues. We need to actually lead that debate and have that debate out in the community. And I think council can play that role. So part of the thing is that I'd like to see is actually a debate, trying to generate the discussion so that people feel confident about the way forward. I think some of the straightforward things we can start off with are things like retrofitting. There is a lot of confidence in that sort of thing, and I agree with Stephanie. Most people would like to see the old buildings made much more sustainable rather than building enormous numbers of new ones. So I think that that's really a very big issue. I also think there's a discussion to be had about retooling some parts of industry. At the moment in Geelong, there's a lot of empty old buildings, i.e. old industrial buildings, that are sitting there largely unused. People may not be aware of this, but during the war years...
Coming up to 90 seconds, Sue.
During the war years, the Ford factory actually made war machines. It was retooled, but we could certainly retool a lot of industries to make things like windmills, etc. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Sue. And finally moving across to Ron Watt as our final respondee.
Thanks, Jeff. I guess with Geelong being considered a manufacturing town, it's logical that we expect there's a whole range of emissions that are going to be pumped into the air here. But I think, as John spoke about, Geelong is at the forefront of many initiatives and controls with the carbon process. But I think it's necessary for us on a local level to keep control of those emissions, to have measures ourselves, and the things that concern us more than anyone is what happens in our local area, so it's important that we actually have control of those measures. I could speak about the things that everyone else has spoken about, but I'd like to sort of hint a little bit on the productive farmland that we've got. 20% of our area is used for agricultural or rural purposes, and I think there's a great deal of education that needs to take place around how we can actually make sure that our soil's ability to contain enough carbon in it is actually improved. So I think we need more education around for our farmers. We need to reduce livestock emissions through some active feeding, rotation of crops, applying nutrients and planting trees on some of our less productive areas, which also helps with erosion. Would also encourage some of our native habitat to come back, but having said that, we also need to make sure we control our weeds and the feral animals. I have had some discussion with a couple of scientists during the week, and they challenged the fact that the rate of carbon emission actually is related to climate change. I'm no expert in that, but I think it's a very interesting debate and something that we all should probably look into at some stage. An extra 10 seconds on that.
Okay, go.
Yeah. I was making the point that I'd had a discussion with a person who's well regarded in the world of science who was challenging this, but for me, I'd like to make sure that we have a clean Geelong where our carbon emissions are as low as possible, and as Mayor I would actually try and enforce that as well.
I'd just like to start by thanking all of the candidates for recognising the really important initiatives that Council needs to be working to promptly implement in that transition towards a low-carbon future. Our question is around, obviously, the Clean Energy Future package has been the significant federal policy in working to drive that transition. And unfortunately, the Clean Energy Future package is an important first step for Australia, but it's only going to be reducing our emissions by 5% by the end of this decade. And so our question is around, what can council do? What can you as candidates commit to doing to actively advance that transition, to take Geelong beyond their role in working towards that 5% pollution reduction target?
Okay, so Stephanie, would you like to make a brief 30-second response to that?
Thank you. It's Zach, isn't it? Thank you, Zach, for the question. Look, I'll go back to that you can't manage what you don't measure, and I think we firstly need to know where we are. So I'll just reiterate that, and I think emissions is part of it, but I think getting caught up in the debate is less relevant than actually doing the things that are really obvious, which is reducing consumption, actually looking at where we are now and seeing sustainability as a much bigger picture, social sustainability and environmental sustainability and financial sustainability.
Okay, Keith, yep, about 30 seconds.
Thanks. Just to add to, I guess, I said before, we need to be urgent in implementing the policies and programs we already have here in Geelong. And I think also we need to be urgent, and I think, again, the council's taken a lead to try to encourage other councils around the state, because it's not just Geelong we're talking about, it's, I guess, the whole state and the whole country. So engaging other councils, and this is another thing which we can do as a lead, and also work as close as we can, particularly with the federal government, on any programs which we haven't currently got.
Okay, John Mitchell, about 30 seconds.
Thank you very much for the question, Zach, and what you're saying is right, but we certainly do as a council work with what we can control, and the future-proofing program that we've got in place is an Australian lead. We work with Wollongong, Newcastle, Launceston and all other councils around how we can reduce our carbon